Terminal 4 at JFK was wrapped in that strange hush before the first wave of departures. Too quiet for comfort. Officer Sofia Lane moved steadily past the gates, her canine partner Zeus at her side. His steps were silent, nose twitching at scents the human eye could never trace. Everything looked routine, but then Zeus stopped. One paw lifted, his breath caught, the moment stretched, and just like that, the ordinary cracked open. Something hidden was about to surface. If you're feeling it already, like and subscribe to stay with the story, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Let's dive in. The first cold gust of wind swept through Terminal 4 of JFK International Airport. Just as Officer Sofia Lane stepped out of the K9 unit truck, her boots crunching lightly on the salt-stained asphalt. The sun hadn't yet made its way above the skyline, but the terminal buzzed with the strange anticipatory energy of a city that never really sleeps. Beside her, Zeus, the imposing black and tan German shepherd, dropped from the vehicle with a quiet thud, his body instantly alert, nose twitching, ears flicking forward. He didn't bark. He never barked unless it mattered. Sofia glanced at her watch. 4:27 a.m. They were scheduled for a joint customs run with Homeland Security, a standard sweep before the early wave of international flights arrived. She knelt beside Zeus, adjusting his harness and double-checking the electronic ID chip embedded near his shoulder blade. "You good, big guy?" she whispered. Zeus responded with a steady, deliberate glance, then turned his head toward the terminal with unusual intensity. The airport's interior smelled like industrial detergent, burnt espresso, and cold metal. Sofia led Zeus through the checkpoint gates, nodding at a TSA officer who barely looked up from his tablet. Everything felt routine. Everything was routine. That's what made her uneasy. They moved like a unit, as they always had. Zeus walked precisely at her left, scanning, sniffing, processing 1,000 cents a second. The bond between them wasn't just professional, it was visceral, forged over shared months in heat, noise, and chaos. Yet something in his gait today felt off. Not wrong, but different. The first anomaly came just past baggage carousel 6. A flight had just landed from Istanbul. Families waited along the glass barrier, faces half lit by early morning light. Zeus slowed, stopped, sniffed. Sofia followed his eyes. Nothing stood out, until it did. An elderly man in a gray wool coat stood slightly apart from the crowd. His silver rolling suitcase had just hit the carousel belt. He didn't reach for it, didn't even look at it. His gaze, blank and unmoving, was fixed ahead like he was listening for a signal only he could hear. Zeus let out a soft, growl-like exhale. Not loud, not aggressive, but different. "Go on," Sofia said under her breath, trusting her partner. Zeus moved forward, not toward the man but directly at the suitcase. He passed passengers, ignored calls, stepped a toddler who tried to pet him. His path was precise, focused. When his teeth locked around the corner of the suitcase and he yanked with enough force to flip it off the belt, everything stopped. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Phones came up, security stepped forward, confused. The man in the gray coat flinched, only for a split second, but it was enough. Sofia ran. "Zeus, heel," she commanded. But Zeus didn't move. He stayed planted, tail rigid, ears back, growl low and constant. "What the hell's in that bag?" a TSA agent shouted. Stepping forward, Sofia raised a hand. "Nobody touches it, back off, now." The agent blinked. "What's your dog doing? That's not protocol." "Zeus doesn't follow protocol," she snapped. "He follows threat." Someone radioed for a supervisor. Someone else hit the silent alarm. The area locked down. The man in the coat began to walk slowly, casually toward the exit. Sofia noticed. "You, sir, stop right there." He didn't stop. Zeus did, but his eyes never left the suitcase. The moment stretched, taut as wire, and then everything cracked. 2 Homeland Security officers rushed in. The man turned, lifting a small black device from his coat pocket. Sofia reached for her firearm. Zeus lunged sideways, positioning himself between Sofia and the bag just as the device blinked red. But nothing exploded. Instead, the suitcase began to hum, a high-pitched, low-head vibration that only Zeus reacted to. He barked, once, sharp, piercing frantically. Sofia froze. Zeus never barked. The man stopped walking, the crowd stepped back. Zeus barked again. Security moved in on the man, forcing him to the ground. The device clattered to the floor and was swiftly kicked away. Sofia dropped to one knee beside the suitcase. "You smell of accelerant." "Not a bomb," she said to no one in particular. Heart pounding. "Then what the hell is it?" asked the TSA agent beside her. Sofia shook her head. "I don't know." But Zeus did. His entire frame was shaking, not from fear, but urgency. Desperation. He placed one paw gently on the suitcase, then looked Sofia dead in the eyes. It wasn't aggression. It was a warning. Something was inside that didn't belong. The sterile hue of the lockdown lights cast an eerie red glow across the terminal as officers swarmed the perimeter, forming a perimeter around the black suitcase that Zeus still refused to move away from. His body was tense, unmoving, as if waiting for something he couldn't quite vocalize. Sofia crouched beside him, one hand hovering above his back, the other still gripping her radio. She barked into the mic, her eyes flicking to the man in the gray coat, now restrained, cuffed, and pressed against a security kiosk by Homeland agents. The man said nothing, didn't struggle, didn't even blink as the agents searched him. "ID reads Kareem Albaz," one of the agents muttered. "Claims to be a bioethics consultant traveling under diplomatic credentials. Says he's here for a UN biodiversity summit in..." Sofia frowned, pulled out her tablet, and ran the name through Homeland's secure interface. No red flags, no criminal record, no travel restrictions. But something didn't sit right. She forwarded the query to Interpol just in case. 2 minutes later, the reply came. No record found. Not low clearance, not redacted, nothing. As if Kareem Albaz didn't exist. But his passport was real. His diplomatic badge had the official blue-gold seal of a country called Velmara. Sofia stared at it. Velmara? She'd never heard of it. She keyed into the database again. No such nation registered. Not recognized. Not listed. And yet the ID chip embedded in the badge pinged as legitimate on the scanner. "Is this a ghost op?" one of the agents whispered. "Like deep-cover non-acknowledged assets?" Sofia didn't answer. Zeus gave a low, tremoring growl, vibrating against her leg. Then something else happened. The suitcase emitted a pulse, barely audible to the human ear. A high hammer buzz, too brief to be anything but mechanical. But Zeus reacted instantly. His head jerked upward, his ears pinned. His mouth opened slightly, exhaling a breath that almost sounded like a whimper. Then, without warning, he released a sharp, short bark. The sound was different than before. Not loud but piercing. Somewhere overhead, deep in the upper stratosphere, a military satellite registered the frequency. Inside NORAD's remote facility in Colorado, a terminal flashed for the first time in 8 years. Code Echo 7. Lieutenant Grace Morrison stared at the screen. "Sir, we just got a match." Source? New York, JFK Airport. K9 signal frequency matches an old CIA field code. Echo 7. Cross and AS says it's linked to Operation Null Window, declassified in part, but the source, she squinted. The signal came from a K9 unit. Dog ID ZK113, alias Zeus. She watched him, noting how the hair along his spine stood straight. "He's sensing something," she said aloud, more to herself than to the other agents. "But it's not a bomb. It's not chemical." One of the Homeland agents, a sharp-eyed woman named Rena Vega, leaned in. "You know that frequency he barked out? That wasn't random. That bark matched an encrypted field ping, military grade." Sofia blinked. "You're saying Zeus triggered a coded signal?" Vega nodded. "Only 4 known frequencies like that ever used by the agency. Yours just lit one up." The suitcase sat silent again. The hum had faded. But Zeus's behavior had not. He pawed at the seam of the suitcase's reinforced corner with meticulous precision, as if trying to indicate a hidden compartment. "Let me open it," Sofia said, already sliding on her gloves. "You sure that's wise?" Vega asked. Sofia hesitated only a beat. "He's telling me it's not going to blow." The agent stepped back, one hand on a sidearm. Sofia leaned in. The suitcase's lock looked normal, but it wasn't. It had no keyhole, no combination dial, just a brushed steel surface. And then she saw it. Microscopic lines, biometric maybe? "Looks like a thermal reader," Vega said, catching her gaze. "Bring him here." Karim was escorted forward, still calm, still silent. Sofia stood tall. Open it. He looked down at Zeus, then at Sofia. I wouldn't, he said, finally speaking. His voice was soft, accented but not regionally polished, educated. It's not meant for you. Sofia's jaw clenched. Then, tell me what is meant for us. Karim smiled faintly. That was the moment Zeus let out the second frequency pulse. This time more deliberate. One bark, one sound. And 30 miles above Earth, the satellite tracked it again. The same code. Echo 7. But attached this time was a file ping. Encrypted, buried since 2017. Operation Null Window, lead subject ZK-100, project status compromised. Satellite AI flagged the signature as high-act. Back at JFK, Sofia's tablet beeped. A message appeared on the screen. Secure transfer initiated. Her eyes widened. Zeus just sent something, she whispered. Vega's eyes darted between her and the dog. What do you mean he sent something? He triggered a handshake. Suddenly, Karim's eyes darted toward the suitcase. He took one step closer and muttered under his breath in a language the translator app couldn't catch. Zeus barked once. Sharp, loud. Karim stopped. Everyone froze. Sofia looked at the suitcase again, then at the man. Who are you? He exhaled slowly. I'm the last courier of Velmara, and your dog is the one thing they couldn't erase. What the hell is Velmara? Vega asked. Karim's eyes flicked up to hers. Not what, who? But before he could say more, Zeus suddenly whipped his head to the left, body dropping low, hackles raised. Someone else had entered the terminal, not through a checkpoint, not from the crowd, from the private staff corridor. And Zeus recognized the scent instantly. His growl rolled low like thunder from the past, and Sofia, heart pounding, turned toward the sound of boots clicking on tile. She didn't know it yet, but the man walking toward them had once held Zeus's leash. The man walking toward them wore a dark civilian jacket with no markings, no badge, no visible rank, yet he moved like someone who had once commanded entire theaters of operations with a glance. His gait was deliberate, soundless. Zeus's growl deepened as if he recognized something more than scent, something buried in memory, raw and unresolved. Sofia stood frozen, heart hammering, eyes locked onto the stranger. Then came the voice, low, gravelly, and unmistakably familiar. Control that dog, Officer Lane. Zeus didn't move. If anything, he pressed closer to the suitcase, placing himself protectively between it and the newcomer. The man stopped, raising both hands. Easy, soldier. Not here for a fight. Surveillance mouth pursed at the edge. Mavaro, Eli. Clearance Omega-4 Joint Special Biological Command. The room froze. Even the Homeland agents went quiet. Eli Navarro, the ghost from Operation Null Window. The name had been buried beneath layers of classified files, sealed, redacted, and erased. And yet, here he was, standing before them like a phantom that Zeus clearly remembered. Sofia stepped between them. What do you want? Eli's eyes didn't leave Zeus. Karim, still restrained, watched the interaction with a strange calm. You won't touch it, he said softly. It's beyond your jurisdiction now. Eli didn't blink. So? Jurisdiction died the minute that thing woke up. Then, without turning, Eli pointed at the suitcase. Has he marked the edge yet? Sofia frowned. What? Zeus, has he found the seam? As if on cue, Zeus's paw shifted forward, pressing down with pinpoint precision against a small, nearly invisible indentation on the suitcase's rear corner. His claws scraped once, then twice. The soft click echoed louder than it should have. Sofia dropped to one knee beside him. The suitcase didn't have a lock because it didn't need one. It had a biological reader, just like they suspected. But now, where Zeus had scratched, a sliver of the casing popped open, revealing a thin, glinting edge of something metallic embedded in foam. Sofia reached in with gloved fingers and pulled out what looked like a microchip, no larger than a grain of rice, but pulsing with a faint green light. That's not a tracker, Eli murmured. It's a genome key. To what? Sofia asked. Karim answered this time, voice low but steady. To what they hid inside. Vega, watching from the side, whispered, So what's actually in the case? Sofia didn't wait. She pressed her palm against the suitcase panel, It scanned her heat signature, beeped once, then hissed open, releasing a fine mist of chilled air and the smell of, then, silence. Inside, nested among layers of temperature-controlled foam, was not a package, nor weapon, nor synthetic material. It moved. A small, living creature lay curled in a fetal position within a transparent containment pod. Its skin was translucent, shimmering slightly with hues of pale blue and violet. Thin, web-like filaments ran along its spine, glowing faintly like bioluminescent threads underwater. Sofia inhaled sharply. Is that an animal? Karim shook his head. No, it's a biosynthetic organism, a designed intelligence, celio but adaptive, built to mirror neural patterns both human and non-human. Navarro stepped forward, for the first time showing real unease. That isn't what we made in Null Window. Karim tilted his head. No, it's what came after. Grown in silence, away from your war rooms and labs. Zeus didn't bark. He stepped forward and sat, eyes fixed on the organism, ears alert but not aggressive. Sofia could see his chest rising and falling faster than usual, his posture both tense and curious. The pod emitted a soft chime, and the creature stirred. One limb, three-jointed like an insect's but covered in soft membrane, extended and pressed lightly against the interior wall. Zeus leaned in. Sofia reached for her radio. I need a Class 6 biohazard team at Gate B12 stat. No labs, no containment. You smuggled this into the United States. You don't get to dictate how this goes. Karim locked eyes with her. You bring that thing into a lab and it will die. Not from disease, from separation. It was designed to bond with the one who awakens it. Vega muttered. Bond? Like imprinting? Karim nodded. In a way, but deeper, it learns from the mind nearest to it during reactivation. Emotions, languages, survival logic. Once bonded, it doesn't replicate, it mirrors. L.A. Navarro stared at the creature as if looking into the abyss. You made a psychic mirror. It's not psychic, Karim corrected. It's biological resonance. A match of intent and memory at the cellular level. Sofia's hands trembled as she looked back at Zeus. The dog hadn't moved, but his eyes, those impossibly intelligent eyes, had never left the pod. Then the creature responded. It turned, not eyes yet, it turned toward Zeus, and it tapped the glass. Once, Zeus lifted his paw and placed it gently against the same spot. The room fell completely still. Eli spoke again, but softer this time. We tried to build soldiers. What the hell did you build, Karim? Karim exhaled. Hope. Before anyone could speak, the lights overhead flickered. Not the normal flicker of power surge. This was systemic, patterned, controlled. A signal. Sofia's radio crackled with static. Then a voice broke through. Faint, synthetic. Repeating one word. Echo. Zeus snapped to attention. The creature uncurled. Its chest expanded like it was breathing for the first time. And in that moment, Sofia knew, whatever they had just opened, it wasn't meant for humans to understand. Not fully. Not yet. She backed away as the pod began to shift. The containment foam around it started to retract. Heat flooded from within, and the creature's form shimmered. Eli's hand went to his holster. Step back, all of you. But Zeus didn't move. He stood his ground, and for the first time in her career, Sofia didn't know if that was a good thing. The heat radiating from the containment pod intensified. Not in a dangerous way, but in a manner that suggested activation. An awakening, not mechanical but biological. Sofia could feel the warmth against her palms, even from a foot away, her body reacting with both instinctive caution and an inexplicable sense of déjà vu. Zeus didn't flinch. His breath had slowed, eyes still locked on the shifting form within the pod, unmoving as if he knew exactly what to expect. The lights in the terminal steadied, the flicker vanishing as quickly as it had come. But the damage was done, emotionally, psychologically, atmospherically. The space no longer belonged to protocol. It belonged to memory. Sofia's earpiece crackled, though no voice followed. The silence hummed with invisible weight. Back up, Navarro whispered behind her, his voice more urgent now, more strained. It's about to connect, but Sofia didn't move. Something rooted her there, something in the heat, in Zeus's stillness, in the strange sound like underwater breathing that echoed from the pod. Then it happened, The pod unfolded, not like a mechanical device but like a flower opening to first light. The casing melted back into itself with a hiss of cooled gas, revealing the creature in full. Small, frail, humanoid in posture but not in form. Its arms were elongated, skin a translucent gray-blue, chest rising and falling with soft rhythms. And then it made a sound. Not a growl, not a cry, a hum, a frequency. Zeus responded by lifting his head slightly and giving a low, tonal growl, not of threat, but of recognition. Sofia blinked. He knows it. Navarro stepped forward, his face pale. He remembers it. Vega, wide-eyed, muttered, "How the hell could he remember something like that?" Kareem glanced between them. "Because they've met before. Or rather, Zeus met its predecessors." Kareem nodded. "In 2014, Kandahar province. A field test, you wouldn't remember it, you weren't supposed to." Her breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean I wouldn't remember?" Navarro exhaled deeply, his posture heavy with weight. "Because it was erased, Sofia. You were there, you and Zeus. You saved him that day, pulled him out when the meltdown went into meltdown. And when you were debriefed, you were given a Class 9 neural purge. Selective memory compression." "You," Sofia said, backing a step. "No, I was never in." But the sentence trailed off as something flickered behind her eyes. A flash, a hallway of sand, concrete, the scent of ozone. The sound of screaming, not human, not animal. And a pair of eyes, dark, canine, familiar, staring back at her through a glass door smeared with blood. She staggered, hand gripping the edge of a steel pole for balance. "No," she whispered again, but her voice had lost conviction. A gesture, not just of comfort, of confirmation. Sofia stared down at him, and this time the memory didn't flicker. It opened. The facility had been called Base 13, a covert testing ground for biosynthetic detection systems. She had been there, part of a civilian-military liaison task force assigned to observe the use of experimental lifeforms in live field environments. Zeus had not yet been named. He'd been designated ZK 113. She remembered now, the night the sirens screamed when something got loose, something they hadn't anticipated. She had found Zeus locked inside an observation pen, body battered from tranquilizer darts, fur matted in plasma. He'd refused to leave without the smaller organism huddled beside him, a creature not unlike the one in the pod now. She had lifted both into a tactical carrier, ignored orders from command, and driven them out through an unsecured perimeter gate during a blackout. Navarro had stopped her at the edge of the ravine. "You disobeyed direct orders," he'd said, gun drawn. Her reply had been simple. "They're not weapons. They're scared." And then, white, a flash, a pulse. And she remembered nothing more. Now, years later, the pieces fell into place like bones returning to a skeleton. Sofia touched her forehead, her breath shallow. "They erased." Kareem nodded solemnly. "Because you saw too much. You weren't meant to understand what you saved." Vega's voice broke the silence. "So what is this thing now? What's its purpose?" Zeus stepped forward before anyone could answer. The creature in the pod turned toward him fully. And then, astonishingly, it reached out, its fingers brushing the air, trembling, echoing Zeus's movements. Kareem stepped closer. "He's communicating. Not through speech, through resonance, mimicry, emotional mirroring. They were designed to detect not just mines or bombs, but intent, heart rate, micro-expressions, hormonal shifts. They sense what we hide. They were the next generation of truth detectors." Navarro swallowed. "And we destroyed them." "You destroyed most, but one survived. The one she saved, the one that bonded to ZK 113. Sofia knelt slowly, her eyes never leaving the strange, delicate creature. "So this isn't new, this is old, this is something we buried." "But get all," Sofia said quietly, "because it never stopped listening." The creature leaned forward, making that soft hum again. Zeus replied with a low whine, and in one smooth, fluid motion the organism stepped fully from the pod and placed a hand, if it could be called that, on Zeus's shoulder. And Zeus allowed it, didn't flinch, didn't resist, and in that instant the lights overhead flickered once more. Not in warning, in sync. Vega's radio buzzed with scrambled code. Navarro's tablet lit up without command. Sofia stood slowly, and the room felt different. The air had changed. It wasn't just about what they had found. It was about what had been watching them all along. The creature's touch lingered on Zeus's shoulder like a thread of old light stretching across time, and for a moment the air in the terminal stood still, as if the pressure of something unspoken weighed down on every breath. Sofia watched with awe as Zeus didn't move an inch, his body language balanced between calm and vigilance, his muscles coiled beneath his fur, but not from fear, something else, something closer to recognition. Then, just as the moment settled into silence, Karim shifted, not with hesitation but with intent. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, hands visible, eyes calm. Sofia turned toward him, one hand still near her holster, the other instinctively dropping in front of the pod. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice low. "You've seen how he responds. That means it's awake, which means there isn't much time." Navarro's brow furrowed. Time for what? Karim didn't answer him directly. Instead, he reached into his coat, not fast, not abrupt, and produced a small silver canister the size of a soda can. He placed it slowly on the floor between them and stepped back. Inside that canister, he said evenly, is the last viable genome map of the original batch, not the synthetic, the first bond-grown line. I brought it here not to keep it, but to deliver it into hands that can still protect it. Vega narrowed her eyes. Why now? Why not go to an embassy, the UN, hell, even a news agency? Karim gave a weary smile. Because Helix is already inside all of those. The name hit the room like a dropped rifle. Navarro muttered, Helix doesn't exist. It exists, Karim said, and it's listening right now. Zeus's ears flicked back slightly, his nose twitching toward the west wing of the terminal. Sofia saw it too. A shadow moved just outside the periphery of the security gate. A man in a standard airport security uniform stood stiffly at a checkpoint. Earpiece in, badge tilted just enough to flash but not enough to read. He looked like every other guard in the building, except he was watching them with too much interest. And he wasn't blinking. Zeus moved first. He turned, broke into a sprint with no hesitation, no warning. He flew across the polished floor like a shadow given form. Zeus! Sofia shouted, but it was reflex. She knew better than to try and stop him when his instincts locked in. The guard turned, too slow. Zeus launched. The man didn't cry out. He reached into his pocket and pulled something that looked like a penlight. But as Zeus struck, the object fell from his fingers and rolled across the floor. Sofia got there seconds later, Vega just behind her. Navarro coming around the far end. Zeus had the man pinned, jaws locked around his forearm, not drawing blood, not yet, but holding with precision. Don't shoot! Sofia yelled as two Homeland officers raised their weapons. Stand down! He's got something, don't let him swallow it. The pinned guard's jaw clenched. His other hand twitched toward his mouth. Zeus snarled. The sound froze everyone. Sofia lunged, reaching the rolling object just as it stopped under a row of metal seats. She scooped it up, expecting a pen, a flash drive, maybe a detonator. It was none of those. It was a capsule, seamless, black, cold to the touch. A capsule designed for ingestion. She looked at Vega. Bioagents? Looks like it, Vega replied, pale. Delivery grade. If he swallowed that, we wouldn't have known until after it activated. Navarro stepped forward, eyes burning. Search his mouth now. Two agents restrained the man. Sofia pried his jaw open with a gloved hand. Inside, tucked beneath the tongue, was another capsule, already slick with saliva. She pulled it free with forceps and dropped it into a containment vial Vega held out. Then she looked down at the man. Who sent you? He smirked, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. You're already too late. Zeus growled again, teeth still latched. Sofia gave a nod. Zeus, release. He obeyed immediately, stepping back but never breaking eye contact. Navarro crouched beside the man. Helix didn't send you to steal the organism, he said. They sent you to kill it before it bonded. The man's smile vanished. Karim nodded grimly. Because once it bonds, it can't be replicated, it becomes singular. Vega looked at the creature who had now climbed onto all fours, its limbs learning the weight of gravity. Singular how? She asked. Karim pointed at Zeus. Because it learns from its bonded counterpart. If it syncs with him completely, it'll become something even Helix can't duplicate or control. Navarro muttered, which means their entire program dies if this one lives. Sofia stared at the man still restrained on the ground. You came in as airport security. How many more of you are here? He said nothing, but that was all the answer they needed. She rose, switching channels on her radio. Code black, secure all exits. Scan all personnel for facial mismatch. Assume at least one more hostile inside the perimeter. Zeus barked once, sharp and in rhythm with her words, and the creature responded. It mimicked the bark, not perfectly but close. The sound was softer, smaller, but the tone, the pitch, it matched Vega whisper. It's imprinting in real time, Kareem said. Not imprinting, evolving. Navarro looked up. Then we're running out of time. If Helix knows it's alive and bonded, they'll hit harder. They won't send one man next time. Sofia scanned the glass beyond the terminal, eyes narrowing. Somewhere in the fogged skyline, headlights flickered near the security fence. And Zeus growled again, longer this time, lower. Not because of the man on the ground, but because someone or something had just entered the outer concourse. And he knew the scent. The sirens hadn't even stopped wailing across the terminal when Zeus abruptly turned away from the chaos and began trotting toward the western corridor. His movement focused and deliberate, not like a pursuit, but like a guide who had suddenly remembered the path forward. Sofia didn't question him. She ran after him, Vega and Navarro flanking her. Kareem close behind with the containment capsule pressed to his chest, and the small bonded creature held gently inside a thermal cradle slung across Sofia's shoulder like an infant too precious for any lab to claim. Zeus didn't slow, didn't pause to sniff or recalculate. He moved with purpose, weaving through access tunnels and mechanical bays, cutting past security gates that blinked red but yielded to Sofia's override code. Within minutes, they emerged into the early dawn light outside the terminal's north service wing, where the air smelled of fuel, steel, and something older. Moss, perhaps, or salt that hadn't touched ocean water in years. At the far edge of the tarmac stood a disused structure, rust peeling from its hinges, windows clouded with age. It looked like it belonged to another century. Where are we going? Vega asked, breathing hard. Kareem pointed at the hangar. This was mine. Before I walked away, Zeus was already there, standing by the sliding door, tail low, ears flicked forward. Body. Sofia reached him and placed her hand on the steel latch, paused only a second before yanking it open with a grinding squeal of corroded metal. Inside, the temperature dropped. The air was different, refrigerated, industrial, and sterile, like a lab frozen in time. Fluorescent lights buzzed to life slowly, casting flickering strips across concrete floors lined with crates, scattered documents, and in the back, 3 upright containment freezers the height of small vans. Zeus walked toward them, tail now raised, body alert. He stopped in front of the center unit and barked once. Vega and Navarro drew weapons reflexively, but Kareem lifted both hands. Don't, he said. They're not dangerous. 13 Sebia asked. Kareem moved toward the freezers, entered a numeric code with shaking fingers, and stepped back as the seal hissed open and released a plume of cold vapor that curled around their feet like mist from another world. Behind the transparent door were 12 containment pods, each housing a form similar to the one now nestled against Sofia's shoulder, but dormant, suspended in cryostasis, their pale forms curled and silent, yet visibly breathing through faint oscillations in their translucent skin. These were supposed to be archived, Kareem said softly. This is the first batch, the real batch, grown not from replication but from emotional genesis. Their neural pathways were fused with specific memories, human memories, extracted and coded into biogenic templates. They were never meant to be weapons, they were meant to be sentinels. Navarro frowned. They keep them here, why not destroy them or protect them? Because no one knew what they really were, Kareem replied. Not even me. Until the bond occurred. Vega stepped closer to the glass. These things are alive. Kareem nodded. And learning, even in sleep they process, they adapt. Then one of the pods flickered. The creature inside shifted, stretching slowly like someone waking from a long, dreamless sleep. A pulse of blue light shimmered through its veins, and then it lifted its head and turned toward the group. It blinked, or performed something like blinking, and then, to everyone's disbelief, it opened its mouth. Zeus, it whispered. The voice was faint, soft, mechanical, but unmistakable. The creature repeated the word clearer now, Zeus. It then turned its head toward Sofia and tilted slightly. Eyes, if they were eyes, locking on hers. And in a voice that mimicked her exact tone and cadence, it said, "Stand down. Easy. I've got you." The phrase was the same she had spoken to Zeus in the terminal just hours earlier. Her own voice thrown back at her by something born of code and cell. She staggered slightly. Navarro stared, frozen. "It copied you from memory?" Kareem shook his head. "No, from bond. It mirrors trust, not sound." It found the praise with the most emotional weight and spoke it back as reassurance. Sofia felt her knees buckle slightly. "Frem remembers what I feel, yes," Kareem said. "They always could. That was the original intention. To build something that can detect lies not through interrogation but through empathy. Something that knows when a child is afraid, when a soldier is about to break, when peace is possible." Navarro turned away, eyes hard. "And we tried to use them to find bombs. We did worse," Kareem said. "We tried to turn them into bombs." Another pod stirred. Then another. Soon 4 of the 12 had awakened, all blinking, all turning their attention to Zeus first, and then to Sofia. She stepped back unconsciously. Zeus, however, sat, calm, proud, as if standing before old friends who finally opened their eyes. The creature on Sofia's shoulder stirred, made a soft chirp, and all 4 of the newly awakened ones echoed it. Different pitches, same rhythm. A language built from resonance. A song made of memory. Then Sofia's earpiece burst with static again. A signal came through, encrypted, scrambled, but pushing past firewall after firewall. "You've breached the outer gates," said a voice from airport control. A black vehicle convoy, military plates but no origin tags. "They're not responding to hails." Vega cursed. "Halix found us." Zeus stood. The creatures turned toward the hangar door. Sofia knew without needing to be told. This wasn't just about hiding anymore. It was about surviving, about choosing what deserved to exist in the world that lay just beyond this moment, where everything they knew was no longer enough to explain what they were seeing. The screech of distant tires clawed against the edges of the hangar's silence as the black convoy approached, headlights slicing through the morning fog like scalpels. Zeus stood at the threshold, unblinking, his breath steady, the creature at Sofia's shoulder humming with rising frequency in perfect synchrony with the 4 now roused beings pulsing softly behind them. Kareem's hand gripped the containment vial tight against his chest, eyes fixed on the approaching darkness as if he had seen this exact moment in a nightmare once and had failed to stop it. Navarro stepped forward, pulled a sidearm from his coat and locked eyes with Sofia. "We hold the entrance. No one comes near these pods." But before anyone could form a response, Sofia's earpiece crackled again. This time not with static but with command. "Agents in Sector B41, stand down. This is Director Joseph Ryland, Joint Task Division, FBI." The voice was firm, unmistakable, cold yet familiar. Vega blinked. "Ryland? I thought he retired 2 years ago." Kareem's expression changed, sharp and suddenly pale. "Joseph Ryland didn't retire," he said slowly. "He disappeared." Navarro narrowed his gaze. "He was presumed dead, killed in a compound fire off the coast of Honduras." Kareem nodded grimly. That compound wasn't a weapon site. It was a lab, the primary breeding facility for Project Genesis Beast. Sofia froze. "You said Genesis Beast was shut down." "Publicly," Kareem said, "but Ryland ran it, from the shadows. He was the one who pitched it as the next evolution in battlefield control. Synthetic organisms bred to bypass human hesitation, capable of identifying insurgent intent before the first shot was fired. He called them empathy weapons." Outside, the black SUVs skidded to a halt. Uniformed men stepped out. Not Homeland Security, not local police. Gear matte black, faces obscured by tactical helmets, patches blank. One of them moved forward, and the others followed in perfect synchronization. No radio chatter, no hand signals, not even glances exchanged. Machines in human skin. Navarro stepped closer to the entrance and raised his weapon. "They're not here to talk. They don't have to," Kareem muttered. "They already know who's inside." Sofia clenched her jaw. "How?" Kareem looked down at Zeus. "Because he was theirs once." Silence settled over the group like fog. The creature cradled against Sofia whimpered, its tiny fingers wrapping tighter around the fabric of her jacket. Then, from the far side of the vehicles, a figure emerged. No helmet, no armor, just a long dark coat, silver hair, and eyes like tempered ice. Ryland. He walked without fear, without haste, stopping just short of the hangar's mouth. And the girl who let it happen. Sofia's breath caught, memory slamming into her chest like a battering ram. 6 years ago. Rain coming down in sheets. A transport truck overturned on a muddy road in the Turkish highlands. A cage ripped open. A black dog inside, shaking, eyes wide, not with fear but with intelligence. With pain. With betrayal. And her, ignoring orders from the man on the comms, screaming to euthanize the subject, choosing instead to lift him into her vehicle with bloodied arms and drive away into the storm. That voice on the comm? It had been Ryland's. "You gave the order," she said now, her voice cold. "You told me to kill him, because he was uncontrollable," Ryland said. "He wouldn't obey field signals, ignored aggression triggers. He was unpredictable. That's the most dangerous thing a weapon can be." Kareem stepped beside her. "He wasn't. I knew I should have buried you with the rest." "You tried," Kareem replied. "But you forgot something. You can't kill something that knows why it was born." Ryland smirked. "Spare me your poetic rot? You think this," he gestured toward the pod and the creatures stirring behind them, "is the future? This is entropy wrapped in skin. You don't control empathy. You weaponize it, or you bury it. You think you're standing on higher ground, Lane? Let me tell you something. The moment you touched that creature, you made yourself obsolete. It learns you, becomes you, and one day it won't need you." Zeus stepped forward, slow, calm. He positioned himself between Ryland and the others, eyes burning with a silent defiance carved from years of buried orders, cage bars and lies. Ryland chuckled, still loyal. "That's almost cute." Then he said it, loud and clear. "ZK 1013, disengage." The hangar held its breath. Zeus didn't move. Ryland's smile faltered. "ZK 113, stand down. Code Echo 19. Zeus blinked once. Then he sat, turned his back on Ryland and looked up at Sofia. The message was deafening. He wasn't that dog anymore. Ryland's voice twisted. "You made your choice then, so be it." He turned toward his soldiers. "Clear it." But before they could raise their weapons, a sound stopped them, a voice, childlike, soft, echoing through the hangar. "Zeus." Everyone froze. The voice came from behind, from inside the freezer pods. One of the other awakened organisms was standing now, no longer fetal, its skin glowing faintly as it stepped forward. "Zeus," it repeated. Then it turned towards Sofia, tilted its head, and in her exact voice said, "Run." Vega whispered, "It just warned us. You're waking up." And they remember everything. Outside, the soldiers began to move. Too fast, too coordinated. Not like people. Not anymore. The hangar floor vibrated beneath their feet as Ryland's soldiers advanced, boots slamming in unison like a death drum accelerating toward climax. But Sofia's attention stayed on Zeus, who hadn't moved since turning his back on his former commander. His body was still, but his eyes, sharp, alert, almost impossibly aware, flicked between the entrance and the awakened beings at his rear, calculating something more than just threat or defense. He was assessing alignment, resonance, responsibility. Vega raised her weapon and barked, "We need to fall back now, there's no cover here." Navarro stepped in front of the pods, knees bent, steady aim trained on the first soldier crossing the threshold. But Zeus didn't join the line. He walked laterally, slowly, between the pods and the entrance, not as a guard but as something older, like a sentinel repositioning for convergence. One of the creatures mimicked his movement exactly, crawling into step with him at a mirrored angle. Then another did the same, forming a loose triangular alignment with Zeus at the head. Kareem noticed first. They're syncing, not randomly, structurally. He's establishing command. Sofia opened her mouth to question but froze when she saw Zeus's posture change. His ears flattened sideways, tail lowered but not tucked, shoulders tense. He was communicating but not with them, with the others. And then came the symbols. From the side of the crate wall, one of the beings, thin, almost translucent, lifted its three-fingered hand and drew into the dust-covered metal an angular pattern. 5 short vertical lines intersected by 2 clean diagonals. Zeus turned his head, stared at the marks, and did the unthinkable. He responded. With his paw he clawed a mirrored sigil beside it, tracing exact geometry with claws designed for pursuit, not writing. The 2 patterns formed a mirrored glyph, one forgotten by time, long buried in files locked behind black bars of government firewalls. Karim inhaled sharply. "That's proto-symmetra," he muttered. He-coding language Helix recovered from ancient neurocartography data. "We never cracked it, but we tried to teach it to the first-gen units as a control tool." Vega blinked. "And Zeus just wrote it?" "No," Karim said slowly. "He understood it." The nearest creature clicked twice, then pressed its palm to the cold concrete. The others mimicked, including the one still nestled in Sofia's chest harness. Suddenly the air shifted, not in pressure but in mood, like the very space recognized hierarchy. The creatures' heads tilted toward Zeus in unison. From the corner of the hangar, a sharp mechanical clang rang out. One of the crates Ryland's men had tossed earlier had split, and inside it lay a second containment unit, its exterior scratched, half buried under debris. Zeus's ears pivoted toward his body stiffened. Karim followed his gaze. "That's the second pod," he whispered. "The failed one." "Failed?" Sofia asked. "Unbonded," he clarified. "It rejected all handlers, showed violent aggression when exposed to human proximity. They kept it sedated indefinitely." Zeus moved toward it, slow, deliberate. Navarro shouted, "Zeus, no! That thing's unstable." But Zeus didn't break stride. As he reached the container, his nose hovered near the biometric lock, a rotating seal that required both human and encoded clearance. No one had that combination anymore. But Zeus didn't need it. With one quick motion, he turned his head and clamped his teeth around the upper lock cylinder, then pulled hard. The crack of metal breaking rang through the hangar like a shot. The lock snapped free. Gas hissed from the pressure valve. The pod shuddered, hissed again, then slowly began to open. Everyone tensed, weapons raised. Vega cursed under her breath, but Zeus didn't move back. Instead, he sat, calm, steady, watching, and when the pod opened fully, the creature inside did not spring out or shriek. It uncoiled slowly, eyes half-lidded, skin a darker hue than the others, thorn gray with faint stripes of bioluminescent orange along its ribcage. Its movement was smoother, less tentative. It emerged from the pod fully, standing at nearly Zeus's shoulder height. Then it saw him. The creature paused. For one long, breathless second, the hangar froze again. And then it did something none of them could have expected. It dropped to one knee, head bowed, arms crossed in front of its chest. A gesture not of submission but of acknowledgement. A salute. Zeus stood tall, chest out, breath even. The creature looked up, eyes glowing dimly, and it whispered. Not in English, not in mimicry, in the same ancient code they had etched into the floor. One word, one name, Sentinel. Karim nearly collapsed. That was the designation, he murmured. Project Sentinel, the theorized Apex variant. Not an observer, not a detector, a leader. Self to Sentinels, Dinah was today's you're not. He turned his gaze to her, and for a split second she swore she saw something new in those eyes. An intelligence not of instinct, but of contemplation. Ryland's voice broke through from outside the hangar. "You opened the second one? You fools, it doesn't obey." "No," Carrie said aloud. "It never obeyed you." Navarro turned to the crates. "How many more like that?" "Just one," Carrie said. He was the end of the sequence, the last encoded node. Sofia looked at the creature still pressed to her chest. "But they follow him because they know who carried the memory forward," Carrie said. "They were bred to recognize continuity. He is their history." Zeus moved back toward the group, and the second creature, darker, stronger, followed in his shadow like a second heartbeat. Vega lowered her weapon. "He's not a dog anymore, is he?" Sofia whispered. "Maybe he never was." From outside, Ryland's men advanced again, heavier now, footsteps like thunder. The creatures moved into formation behind Zeus, almost by instinct, not trained, aligned. Navarro reloaded. "Who what now?" Sofia looked to Zeus, waiting, and Zeus stood at the threshold of the hangar, backlit by the creeping dawn as the Helix strike team advanced with military precision. their boots pounding in rhythm, weapons drawn but pointed low, not because they intended peace, but because they weren't targeting conventionally. These weren't normal soldiers. Their gait was too light, too synchronized, and the black armor they wore bore the signature sheen of bioskin weave, lab-grown, reflex-enhanced, molded to flex with neural impulses instead of muscle. Sofia took one look and understood that if they stood and fought here, they would die. Kareem was already moving, scrambling to the rear storage wall of the hangar, throwing open a steel hatch that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. "The way," he shouted. "It leads to the old utility tunnels, decommissioned but still accessible. If we make it to the central hub beneath Terminal B, there's a containment grid. We can lock them out." Vega nodded and covered the retreat, firing 2 warning shots toward the advancing line, buying seconds. Navarro helped Kareem pry open the next seal, revealing a staircase carved into reinforced concrete, narrow but stable. Zeus turned his head once more to the creatures behind him, now 8 in number, including the apex who had bowed. With no verbal cue, he jerked his head toward the opening and they moved, fluidly without hesitation. The small one on Sofia's chest tightened its grip, letting out a low pulse that echoed back from the others in harmonic reply. They descended into the dark. The tunnels below the airfield had once been a maintenance artery for early Cold War emergency systems, lined with old rails and forgotten wiring. Now, under flickering red emergency bulbs activated by Kareem's override key, they looked like the veins of a dying giant, cracked, pulsing with residual energy. Zeus led the way, paws sharp even in the dim. Behind him, the others formed a phalanx of quiet grace. And for the first time, Sofia noticed that their movements were entirely tied to his. Every step he took, they mirrored in milliseconds. Kareem whispered, "He's leading them with motion cues, micro-signals, no speech, no commands, like he was born to it." Sofia didn't answer. She couldn't. The weight of adrenaline and revelation and survival pressed too hard against her ribs. The team reached the containment junction just as the hatch behind them groaned. Helix was close, faster than they should have been, probably tracking them through heat and electromagnetic disruption. Navarro set charges along the side corridor, and the concussive blast bought them maybe 20 seconds. Zeus paused at the center of the junction, nose twitching, head tilted. Kareem pointed toward a sealed hatch embedded into the wall. "That's the old hidden station," he said, codenamed Red Vault. "No electronic access. It opens through thermal and motion signature only. Problem is, the locks haven't been used in 20 years. Sofia turned to Zeus. "Can you smell it?" Zeus approached the hatch slowly. The creatures fell in behind him, silent as falling leaves. He sniffed once, then looked back at Sofia. His body shifted. His shoulders dropped slightly. He was preparing for something. Then he lunged, not at the hatch but at Sofia. Her reflex was to flinch, but before she could react, his teeth found the reinforced nylon strap of her tactical vest, specifically the thick shoulder loop that contained the backup thermal beacon. Zeus bit down hard, so hard the strap creaked under pressure, and then released. The fabric tore, the beacon's core glowed faintly, and with a sharp hiss, it deployed a wave of phosphorescent mist, reacting to the canine's heat signature and chemical enzymes stored in the lining of his teeth. The hatch blinked green, unlocked. Kareem stared. He just activated a molecular recognition sequence. We never got that to work in the lab. Sofia's heart dropped. It was encoded to him. "No," Kareem whispered. "He is the key." The vault opened. Cold, stale air swept outward, carrying with it the scent of ozone and ancient dust. Inside, the walls were lined with dormant systems, power conduits, and a bioreactive chamber once used for studying resonance field interactions. It had no defense systems, no weapons, only one thing, absolute shielding. It was safe, for now. Zeus entered first, leading the creatures inside. Sofia followed, but just as Navarro stepped through, gunfire cracked down the corridor. Vega screamed, hit in the leg, dropped behind a support column. Zeus turned on instinct and bolted. "Zeus, no!" Zumation shouted, but he was already gone. Sprinting back toward the tunnel, the creatures surged forward to follow him. But the Apex variant, the Dark One, raised a hand. Stopped them. For the first time, one of them made a decision independent of him. Sofia grabbed the apex by the arm. "You can't just let him go alone." But the creature looked her in the eye, and in her own voice whispered, "Trust." Zeus reached Vega within seconds, teeth flashing, intercepting a Helix soldier just as he raised a weapon toward her head. His bite crushed the man's elbow, sent the firearm skittering into the dark. Another soldier fired. Zeus jerked back, leg wounded but didn't go down. He dragged Vega toward cover, biting at her vest strap the same way he'd triggered the vault. Sofia and Navarro sprinted forward, covering fire blazing. Blood trailed behind Zeus in long smears. Once Vega was secured, Zeus turned again, limping, breathing heavily. Then he did something no one expected. He stopped, turned his head toward Sofia, and barked once. Loud, sharp, then again shorter, softer. Her vest vibrated. A signal. A ping. The beacon unit he'd bitten was now broadcasting multi-spectrum coded through biofilth, fused with his DNA. The hallway lit up on Sofia's HUD with glowing red silhouettes. Every Helix soldier in the tunnel now visible through thermographic overlay. He tagged them, Navarro breathed. It tagged them all. The creatures inside the vault responded instantly. 3 of them leapt forward, using the opened signal data to predict enemy movements. The fight tilted in their favor. For a moment, it seemed like they could win. But Zeus down. He collapsed halfway through the tunnel, blood pooling beneath him. Breath shallow. Sofia reached him first, dropped to her knees. Zeus blinked. Once. Twice. His paw moved, tapped her thigh twice, the same way he used to when asking for release. She felt it in her chest, the weight of what he knew, what he chose, what he had become. The sterile white of the recovery chamber hummed with a low electric buzz. Not harsh, but soft and steady like a mechanical heartbeat. Air purified every 12 seconds. Light shifted subtly every 90 to simulate sunrise. Outside the glass walls, the new containment center, now renamed the Joint Biosentinel Initiative, stood tall beneath the skyline of Geneva, surrounded not by guards but by researchers, diplomats, and delegates from 12 nations, each one carrying the weight of a new agreement forged in the wake of chaos. Inside, Sofia sat beside the elevated platform, where Zeus lay breathing steadily, IVs removed, bandages faded, and that old gleam in his amber eyes quietly rekindled. The wound had nearly taken him. They'd almost lost him in that tunnel, and for several agonizing minutes, Sofia had watched as his heartbeat danced too close to the edge. But then the creatures, his followers, his family, his mirror selves had gathered around him, humming in low, vibrating harmony. They had touched him one by one, pressing palms or foreheads against his body, like acolytes transmitting something more than warmth, an echo of resonance, of shared memory, of survival. And Zeus, impossibly, had responded. A slow, ragged breath, followed by a twitch of his paw, a whine, a blink, the beginning of return. 2 days later he was standing, now fully conscious, alert, and surrounded by technological systems designed to monitor but never control him. Zeus was more than alive. He was revered. "We found something else," Karim had told them hours before, placing the chip retrieved from the broken containment suitcase into an international analysis core. His secondary neural archive embedded in an organic substrate. Data encoded directly into protein chains. It's ancient tech now, but back then it was years ahead of us. Someone embedded a record of Zeus's origin. The screen had flickered, then bloomed into a spread of biosequence patterns and logs. Voice recordings, test trials, behavioral reports. The truth unfolded in a quiet crescendo. Zeus had been the first of his kind, not by accident, but by intent. His genome had been spliced with sequences extracted from a now extinct canine line known for anomalous olfactory receptors. But what made him different wasn't just scent, it was interpretation. Within his brain, a specialized lobe had evolved, not constructed but triggered, capable of differentiating emotional intent through molecular traces. He didn't just smell fear, he smelled lies. Microfluctuations in sweat glands, shifts in hormone composition, the faintest pheromonal spike of deceit versus distress. He had been the first biological lie detector, and that had terrified Helix, not because he couldn't be controlled, but because he couldn't be manipulated. Zeus had, without ever speaking, dismantled the foundation of coercion, and so they ordered him terminated, not because he was broken, but because he was true. The revelation shattered what was left of Helix's influence. Political leaders, exposed by their attempts to bury the data, folded. The bioagents were dismantled. The Geneva Accord was born. The creatures, now referred to as symbionts, were granted protected status as sentient biological entities. And Zeus became their emblem. Not a weapon, not a tool, a bridge. His face, stoic and knowing, was emblazoned on the new Bio-Sentinel seal, a silver outline of his profile surrounded by 12 stars, each representing a nation committed to the initiative. Sofia was named Director of Liaison Operations, the first human to ever lead a program not solely populated by humans. The apex creature, who now answered to the name Ashen, stood at her right hand during every council session, offering his silent presence as confirmation that cooperation wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. In the months that followed, facilities bloomed across the globe, not for containment but for cohabitation. Symbionts paired with field operatives, assisting in disaster zones, border conflicts, psychological trauma interventions. They didn't speak, but they understood. They didn't fight unless they had to, and when they did, they never lost. Zeus returned to Field Command 6 weeks after his recovery. Not as a canine, not as a soldier, but as a symbol. He wore no leash. He carried no harness. He walked beside Sofia during deployments, the creatures flanking them like a living constellation of new life. Children who had seen too much laughed again when the small ones echoed their laughter back, amplifying joy. Soldiers hardened by loss found comfort in the creatures who sat beside them in silence, mirroring the ache and reminding them they weren't alone. And always at the heart of it was Zeus. One morning, as dawn cracked over the Alps, Sofia stood beside him on the roof of the Initiative HQ, the wind lifting her hair as the first sunlight kissed the compound walls. Zeus sat, gazing forward. Ashen crouched beside him, head low in silent reverence. Sofia knelt, pressing her forehead gently to Zeus's. "You changed everything," she whispered. "You made them listen. You made me listen." Zeus closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. He turned his head slightly and watched the sun rise. Behind him, a new world was waking, one no longer ruled by fear or dominance, but by choice, by trust, and by the scent of truth that could no longer be denied. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps keep these stories alive. What part hit you the hardest? Was it Zeus defying his former master, or the moment he was honored as more than just a dog? And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to know where this story found you.